Oh, you almost got me. You almost got me saying something right before it went little red light to get this going. Anyway, listen, you're on the YouTubes, you're on the Gloss America YouTube channel. You know what to do. Hit like and subscribe, and let's get after it. Hi, hello, and welcome to your favorite Average to Good podcast. Call it what you want. I'm Jimmy Conrad, also known as Red Dot, and I'm here with Charlie Davies, also known as Bingo, and Tony Meola, also known respectfully as Big Toads. And thankfully, he's not muted, or at least I'm not sure if he is. Toads, are you muted right now?
No, I'm not muted, Jimmy.
He's not muted. He's not muted. All right, listen, we got a great show for you today. Mauricio Pochettino has come out of the wilderness and has made some quotes. He obviously had an interview that he did, and we're going to break down what he had to say. Musah Reyna has chimed in with some recent comments about the situation with the national team a year out from the World Cup, and we'll get into some other fun stuff too as we do. Chuck, I don't see the rich mahogany behind you. I see a neon sneaker, and oh, there it is. So same room, just a different backdrop.
Yeah, I'm just giving you a new look, a new fresh look. You know what I mean?
All right, new year, new you. I absolutely love that.
Hey, it's 2025.
I love that.
Jimmy, no comment on mine.
No, you look like you're still.
It's called Vanilla. The room is called Vanilla.
It's called Paramount Plus offices right here.
I love it,
man.
I love it. All right, so let's get into Mauricio Pochettino, because if you're watching now or if you're listening and you haven't seen these comments, there's some good ones. And the big topic, I think, is mindset over talent. And we're going to unpack a little bit about what he was saying. And the first thing, and Tones, I'm going to come to you first on this. He said that the Gold Cup is a proving ground. His quote was, "It's a good opportunity to test different players and see their character." Okay, so I guess the first part of this is, should we use the Gold Cup as an opportunity to test different players? Or I actually feel like it's a good opportunity to really kind of have your core ironed out and then build from there, because we're not going to have a tournament like this that's very similar to how a World Cup could be set up.
Yeah, I think the three of us are probably all on the same page, right, with this, that we got to see that this tournament became important. We've got to see, as you mentioned, his core players, his group of players that he's going to kind of ride with and build around. But I love the fact that, when I heard the quote, I thought the quote about character, the part about character, and wearing he mentioned wearing the jersey with pride. He was talking to the core group. He wasn't talking to the guys on the outside. It was more like, I read it as, if this group of players don't get it done, then I'll go find other players. I'll go find another Diego Luna. I'll go find another Ajiman that will give me everything that they have. And I think in our conversations, Jimmy, in LA, whatever it was, 6 weeks ago or so, around the Nations League, he was really clear about the fact, and we've mentioned this a few times, he doesn't care where you play. He doesn't care who you are. He doesn't care who the names are. If he did, then he would never called in Diego Luna or Ajiman or Brian White or any of those guys. He wouldn't have called in any of them, Arston, if he cared where you played all the time. So I'm all on board, Chuck, with everything that he said, man.
I couldn't agree more with you, Tony, because again, what we saw from them in the Nations League against Panama is I wouldn't say was so much the heart that was missing or the character, but it was the football side of things, like the quality and understanding tactics and understanding how to take advantage of certain aspects of the game, understanding your opponent and their strengths. The lack of that, I think, was concerning. But then you go to the game against Canada, and that's all about character. That's all about digging deep. That's all about a response. And they didn't bring that. The fact that Tyler Adams, far after, came out and said, I can't disagree with people talking about the fight, the character aspect. That's a big problem.
Big problem.
I know it's a little thing that you're saying, okay, it's a month removed from the Nations League. All right, let's talk about it. A lot of these former national team players and analysts said that, the U.S. didn't bring it. They didn't have the fight. Your head coach, Mauricio Pochettino, brought it up, and you're doubling down and verifying that was missing. That's a big problem. I think to spin it forward, the Gold Cup is going to be very important for anyone that's selected. Anyone that's selected, I think you're going to see the core of players being brought into play. Obviously, there are going to be some missing players due to the Club World Cup, but if you are there, this is your last chance to say, I'm going to give everything I got for my country to show that Mauricio Pochettino, you can trust in me, and that every aspect from team meetings to team practice to when we show up and play the matches, I am at a 10. I am locked in and I'm ready to go. So I think, Jimmy, you're spot on that because we don't have much time left before the World Cup. This is not the time to experiment. This is not the time to go, oh, let's bring in, the guys on the fringes. This is, I need to know who is going to be playing next summer. And I have to bring in the best players that I think will do the job.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Some other quotes from Mauricio Pochettino throughout this interview that he did. He said he's had 8 months to scout the player pool. His quote was, "We have a better picture." With regard to the mindset over talent, he said, "We need the right characters to be really competitive. It's not just about showing up in your home country. We must compete hard," which for me is a non-negotiable, right? And then one of the last ones he said, "We need to be intelligent in the way that we're going to select the players and not just choose based on talent alone." And that kind of bleeds into what I just said. We need to have the right characters to be really competitive. So what's interesting for my own personal experience, I was a guy that parlayed a good January camp into getting called into a Gold Cup and then using the Gold Cup as a springboard to getting trusted by the coaching staff, Musah Reyna, Glenn Meyernick, to being someone they can rely upon in the role that I knew I was probably going to be the best fit for. So whoever gets selected.
What was your first cap in? Was it in a January camp? Was that your first cap?
My first cap was Gold Cup against Cuba in 2005 in Seattle. Me and Clint Dempsey both had our first caps together.
Did you perform well, or did you?
I played in the middle of a back three. You guys will love this. I played in the middle. We played like a 3-3-3-1. And obviously it's adaptable and fluid, but I played in the middle of that back three. I had Frankie Haydick on one side and Tony Santa on the other, and Marcus Hanneman in goal. Yeah, it was fun. Wow. And we went down 1-0 though, and I was like, this is the worst. We can't lose to Cuba at home in my first ever cap. And we thankfully scored right before halftime, and then we went on to win 3 or 4-1. But yeah, it was
a rough 45.
It was, honestly, I think Clint scored right before halftime in his first cap, and that took a little bit of pressure off going into halftime 1-1. If not, Bruce would have lit us up at halftime.
Were you responsible for the goal?
I was not. No. It was
blame the goalie for sure.
No. We kind of let a counterattack happen down the left side. They crossed it and we lost the mark at the back post. And I wasn't directly involved, so I felt a little bit.
But you were involved in some capacity because you were out of position, or
you didn't head it out.
I'm never out of position, Chuck. I'm never out of position. Listen. When you're not super.
Oh, there it is.
You're getting beat on the header here.
I don't know if I'm getting beat there. I'm a little jumping higher than everybody else.
He's in front of you.
I think his timing was off, Tony.
Who's that? Is that Brad Davis looking?
Davis.
Is he a spectator there?
I don't know what goal. Yeah, that's the 2005 Gold Cup because he was part of it. He was my roommate for a good portion of that trip.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know what? I love those uniforms, by the way. I know we're
same.
All talking,
that's total 9. The total 90 era.
Yeah.
That was top. That was top.
Nice.
So bringing it back to Mauricio Pochettino, I'm very curious as to who he's going to call in for these friendlies. That feels like for the Turkey and Switzerland window, and then how whoever takes advantage of that, who's gonna get called in for the Gold Cup. If he's still experimenting, I am a bit concerned that we're in that phase. I feel like we should have had most of that locked in at that point, and maybe he is. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but it just feels like he's still interested in looking for the mindset and mentality over talent. I totally understand where that's coming from, but I think, Tones, you said it right. That messaging was more for the core. Like, you guys need to get your shit together.
100%.
Because it's almost go time.
I have a question for both of you, because I think this is how we can relate the two. Is you got your first cap in a Gold Cup in 2005, a year before the World Cup. Do either of you see Mauricio Pochettino giving someone their first cap in this Gold Cup?
Who would be available for first caps?
Damian Downs.
He would be one.
Noah Kai Banks.
Now, Downs was going to get called in for the Nations League, right?
That That was my understanding. Yes.
Yeah. Noakai wasn't. I always get those two mixed up. Which one was called in and which one wasn't, or was going to be called in. Damian
So-
Downs would make sense. 20 years old still,
Cool.
right?
Yeah.
Noah Kai Banks is quite young. I will say I was on the other side of that. I was kind of in the now or never mode. By the time I got my first cap, I was 28. So I had a lot of experience at that point and was emerging into more of a leader and had developed that side of the game a little bit more. Listen, Noah Kai Banks probably definitely more talented than I was at his age in particular, but I thought I brought some intangibles that I thought could fit into the group with Bruce, and I made sure that those were on full display.
And I also want to throw in the goalkeeper situation, right? There's a lot of goalkeepers not playing, but then there are some who are playing. You have like a Jonathan Klinsmann who's playing in Serie B. You have Diego Cochin who's been brought in but not playing with the first team. He's been on the bench. So good shout out there by Brandon Leviscas. But I think goalkeeper, that could be a position where you might get someone with a cap. It also depends on Matt Turner. Is he making a move? If he is making a move, maybe he can't be available for the Gold Cup because that preseason is so important with the next club. So, these are some of the questions. If someone's making a move, do they go to the Gold Cup knowing that this is your last tournament before a World Cup? What's more important versus I got the biggest year ahead of me? And we all know your coach, your manager wants you there at preseason for every damn training, every moment, because you need to integrate with the squad. You need to integrate with the coach's tactics and the way he wants to play out of the back, especially if you're a goalkeeper.
I suppose we throw Serginho Dest on there, right? Because he hasn't gotten a cap under Klinsmann. I'm sorry, under Pochettino.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's a different scenario. I'm just trying to think of guys that would be, because I feel like January camp. If we didn't have January camp, this discussion would be a little bit different, right? Because some of those guys wouldn't have got we would have thrown like a Diego Luna into the conversation, somebody like that. Jimmy, does Walker Zimmerman get his cap?
Well, he's got one under Pochettino at the January camp, so he's been around
January camp. That's right. Yeah,
and
but I think it's telling he didn't get called into the Nations League.
Agreed. Agreed. I think Nathaniel Brown is a name that's being thrown right now in the comments. He'd be a dual national, 21 years old, plays for Eintracht Frankfurt, getting a lot of minutes. We obviously need some depth behind Jedi Robinson because there's a pretty steep drop off after that. I think what's interesting about the Gold Cup is that if you get called in and play, you're cap tied. There isn't because it's an official competition. You can't get out of it once you commit. It could be an interesting carrot to dangle for dual nationals. Like, hey, we're going to bring you in. But the problem is, and this gets back to the original question I asked you, Tones, do we want to let Jedi Robinson get the majority of the minutes in this competition so you can continue to strengthen what you want to do as a team? But if you're trying to persuade a Nathaniel Brown, then you also want to make sure that you're giving him valuable minutes so that he feels like he's part of the group and can contribute in a meaningful way. That's an interesting conversation to have, but I would definitely be interested in giving, of all the names we've said, I think giving Nathaniel Brown, if we could get him in, would be a really valuable piece to this puzzle in terms of depth at that left back position.
Yeah. Has he even considered?
I don't think so, but that's the carrot we can dangle. The Gold Cup,
let's
baby.
Dangle that damn thing.
Dangle it. Why not? Let's see.
But with regards to your question, I would think about it. I would think about it from a coaching standpoint, right? With Anthony Robinson, you didn't see him. You know he is. You didn't see him, but you also incorporated this wrinkle with him against Jamaica. Did you want to continue to build on that in the Nations League, and you weren't able to because he wasn't available? So now you bring him in here and you start to continue to build that part of the game, right? So from a coaching standpoint, I would think that it would depend on what your ideas are. I saw enough against Jamaica in that leg too with Anthony Robinson. I know he can do it. Or do we need to refine things because we're going to do it moving forward? So that's what I think that's what would make that decision for Pochettino.
No. And I do. Ivis is stating a really good comment in our private chat saying that Nathaniel Brown played for the Germany's U21s back in March, which wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, it's recent, right? Yeah.
So I don't know if he's even considering coming to us, but again, you could dangle that carrot. You bring up some good points though here, Tones, because there is something about identity, and I wanted to get into this part of the conversation. And I think what's most frustrating for me as a fan watching this team, and if we reference the Nations League in terms of our recent performance, I think the underlying feeling that we all have is this team just doesn't feel like it's gotten any better, right? Like we've seen, there's something about this group of players, or there's been a game that we've seen from them that we're like, yes, that's it. I need more of that in my life, right? And that's the standard that I know they're capable of, and now we need to build on that standard. And so I wonder, for everybody listening, you can hit us up at Golazo America on any of the social media platforms, or hit us up in the comments right now if you're watching live. What is the game that you saw from this group that you thought, these are the guys? We're going places in 2026. And when we watch the Nations League, it feels like we've taken a step back in a lot of different facets of it. Isn't just pride or playing as hard as we can or being bastards to play against. Yeah, that's part of it. But it also felt like, man, these guys just don't seem as fluid or even, the tactical and technical side of the game as well. Just feels like we've been lacking. So I kind of wanted to throw it to you guys. And Tones, I'm going to come to you first. Which game did you see from this group that you thought, these are the guys that I see something in this performance that I know that we can build upon, and we need to get back to that?
The first game that comes to mind was in the 22 World Cup against England. That's the game, the 0-0. I suppose we could have gotten a little bit more in the out of the attack, but they played a really good English side. And I look at, and I think this is maybe part of the frustration. I look at that lineup. You had Turner still in goal. I'm thinking of the guys that are still available to, that are playing now. Tim Ream, okay, he's on the outside, but Anthony Robinson was part of that. Serginho Dest was the right back. Adams, Musah, and McKennie in the midfield. Pulisic on the left. It was Timothy Weah up top with Haji right? So I'm looking and I'm like, well, the core of that group is still available to us. If we could do it in 2022 with the second youngest team in the World Cup, why can't we translate that to 2026 when all of these guys are going to be in their prime statistically age-wise, right? So they're going to be all around 26, 27 years old, that group of players for the most part. Matt Turner will be a little bit older. Some guys will be a little bit older. But we were around 22, 23 years old, somewhere around there in 2022. Like, why can't we see composure in the midfield, knocking the ball through all three lines, however you want to play? They were just comfortable in that game. Of course, needed a goal. But at the time, anybody would have taken a 0-0 draw in that game with England. So that for me, Chuck, is the one that comes to mind initially.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm looking at that lineup from the England point of view. And so you got Jude, Declan Rice, Bukayo Saka, Harry Kane, right? 4 field players and Pickford. But the 4 field players, if anything, you'd say Jude, Saka, and Declan Rice. Harry Kane has probably stayed the same. He definitely hasn't dropped off. Have gotten better, right? They've improved. That's the core of that starting 11. And you throw in some guys that are probably obviously phasing off. Raheem Sterling fell off a cliff. Mason Mount fell off a cliff. And then, Stones, Maguire, Trippier, Shaw, probably all haven't done well. But you have like an influx of new players that are coming into the team. Now, are they better than they were in 2022? I'd argue, yeah, they are. Plus, they have the experience. I also agree with you, Tony, in terms of a performance that was really encouraging because of that English side and all the talent that you'd say, we outplayed that team over 90 minutes. It was a draw, but you left feeling proud of the group. You left that match saying, man, I can't wait for 2026 because this is a young core and we just matched up with one of the favorites in the World Cup and we got the better of them in that performance. Now, if England underestimated us or maybe thought, okay, we didn't maybe want to take the initiative to them or they got caught off with the tactics, whatever the problem is, I thought that was a phenomenal performance from the guys. Now, to think of a performance where they needed a win and they got the win would be the Iran game in the same tournament. And I look at the Iran performance saying both teams backs up against the wall, knowing that a win will most likely secure them with the second place finish in that group to advance. I look at that being, that's a big performance. Christian put his body on the line took a knee to the pelvic area. It was a beautiful goal in the way that Weston played it wide to Serginho Dest. And it felt like the game was controlled. Unfortunately, Josh Sargent, who was playing well in that match, had to leave injured. But ultimately, that was a performance that you got to dig deep, you got to get a result, and you got to be resilient. And they checked the box across the way in that match. So I look at that match being like, it wasn't as aesthetically pleasing as the England match, but this is a match in a World Cup where you're playing against a tough opponent and you got to get the job done. So those are the two performances that stand out in my mind, because I don't want to talk about Gold Cups or Nations Leagues because they're so regional, and no disrespect to Mexico or Canada, but that is on the world stage, and they produced.
No, I agree with you. There's a certain level of maturity in those two games as well, too. A certain level of professionalism in terms of our approach and our discipline, right, to make sure that we were really buttoned up in a lot of different areas. In the England game, too, Weston McKennie had a great chance. He hit it over from the penalty spot. Pretty good look. Another day, he hits the back of the net. Maybe we walk out of that game with a famous 1-0 win over England in the group stages. So, yeah, I like those picks a lot. However, despite the fact that you just disparaged my pick before you even knew what it was, Chuck, I'm going with the Nations League pick, and I'm going to the first Nations League final. It was against Mexico in Denver.
3-2.
Yeah, 3-2. But there was something about that game that I loved. We gave up an early goal, right? You're thinking, oh, crap. Now the fans are all in on Mexico. They're going to beat the U.S. We find our way back into it. Sure, it was through a set piece, maybe not through the run of play, but we get it to 1-1. Then we go down 2-1, and we get another set piece goal with 10 minutes left to make it 2-2. And then we get that goal in extra time, which is the famous shushing of Christian Pulisic off the penalty. We win it 3-2. There was something about that game that I was really encouraged by. I was galvanized with this. Look at these guys. They've got that DNA. They've got that fight. They've got that bite. They want this. And I thought, wow, that is a performance that if you add that mentality and that desire to want to get a result and that fight back with the talent that this group of players obviously has, there really is nothing going to slow us down. And then when we get into the World Cup and you add that level of maturity and professionalism, dude, we are going to be awesome in 2026. And we haven't really seen much of that since then. Maybe we need a World Cup to kind of kick us in the ass with this particular group of players to really get it going. But I was really excited. When I think about that game, I still get excited. Like, this group of players has what we're looking for. We've seen it in previous Nations League, and now we come into this, and it's like, yeah, where's that? Where's that urgency to our game? And can Mauricio Pochettino, is he the guy that can help us find it? Now what's interesting, we'll reference a co-host here, a former co-host. Jesse's kind of given that. Jesse Marsh has given that to Canada. A little bit of that thump. Now, sure, does that kind of that mentality and that energy, can you maintain that over 2 World Cup cycles with the same group? I'm not sure that you can, but Mauricio Pochettino and his coaching staff have to figure out how to light that fire underneath these guys. So I don't know what games have been picked by the comments, but I do think that there are some, which is encouraging, that we have evidence that this team, this core of players, can go out and get results against some of the best players and best teams in the world at the highest and biggest competitions and win games that they need to win. Now, obviously, we could flip this and say there's some pretty disappointing performances along the way as well. But it's nice to know that these guys can tick some of the boxes that we're looking for.
I just want to add, because I don't want to discredit what John Herdman did for that Canada side before Jesse Marsh took over. Let's not forget they were the top 100%. Team in World Cup qualifying. The only thing that they really faltered in was the World Cup. And I look at the inexperience of John Herdman at that level. The biggest mistake him making was before the Croatia game, saying we're going to win this game and disparaging Croatia, and Croatia just absolutely wiped the floor, which is verified that was bulletin board material for Croatia. The coach was like, oh, great. Let me put this smack dab in the middle of the locker room and go, guys, look what Canada's saying. This coach said, you guys are done. You don't have it. So it came back to bite John Herdman in the butt in the way that he got them to be motivated and how they came out. And they were kind of the underdogs, right? They could have easily won that game against Belgium with the chances that they had in that first half on the counter. I mean, Tajon Buchanan had a couple of brilliant chances, Alphonso Davies as well. So can Jesse take them up a notch from where they were? Because they were phenomenal heading into the World Cup. Unfortunately, they underperformed massively. But again, like you said, with this current group, you would have expected them to take another step. Now, the only question I pose is, we hire a coach like Mauricio Pochettino, his first time coaching internationally. Did he have enough time per se? Right? Did we short him, bringing him in with such a short amount of time and a build up to a World Cup, not having a full grasp of the understanding of a pool that you would normally get, and a 4-year cycle, right? If Berhalter wasn't rehired right away, Pochettino takes it, although he was out of job with Chelsea, and I understand that. But if he was there from that point to now, would the team be in a different position? Would there be more changes in the squad, right? These are just questions. I'm not saying it's one way or another. Versus he comes in and he has to stick with this core because he doesn't have much time.
Well,
right?
I want to add on that, Jimmy, real quick, which then just listening to Charlie talk about this, and we've had the discussion about time. At what point is it too late? If you don't have enough time to prepare the players that you have, excuse me, what point is it too late to start bringing in new players, right? To start bringing in guys that haven't been part of the program. Now, if you tell me somehow Erling Haaland could miraculously get a U.S. citizenship, and you're going to bring Erling Haaland in a month before the tournament, I know I'm exaggerating to make the point, but I think you know what I'm saying. Then you do it. But at what point, if you already don't have enough time, is it too late?
Yeah, these are good questions, and we're going to try to find some answers after our first break of the show. So keep it right here.
These breaks.
Keep it right here. Don't go anywhere. Keep it here. All right, welcome back into Call It What You Want. I'm Conrad alongside Chuck Wagon and Big Tones. And we asked some big questions before the break. We want to get your comments as well. We're going to have a little trigger who you want at the end of the show. That's one of our favorite pastimes and traditions here on Call It What You Want. I guess let's bring in Musah Reyna. He went on a couple podcasts. He's doing the podcast tour, friend of the show, obviously living legend for the U.S. men's national team and just soccer in general in this country. He stopped by to say hi to Alexi, stopped by to say hi to Tim and Landon and all the great stuff that they're doing on their respective shows. And he said this on Tim and Landon's show with regard to the national team. This is Musah Reyna. He goes, when you are a national team coach, you need to know the animal you are coaching. You need to know the environment. And we're lacking that. If you're an American coaching the U.S. team, you know the culture. You know the pride and how important the national team is. When you bring in somebody from the outside, they don't understand it, especially in our country because we're so different. And this was with regard to Mauricio Pochettino being appointed. I don't want to cause any beef here between Pochettino and
Bruce, but can I add something?
Because he did say he respected Mauricio Pochettino. I just want to make sure that was thrown in there. Just saying in general. Go ahead.
What I will say is, if you had the chance to bring in a Jurgen Klopp or a Pep Guardiola, De Zerbi, any of the top managers in the world, I want to preface that. You do it, but with the understanding that someone on the staff can very easily have a good understanding of the player pool. I mean, if you had Tony or yourself or Clint Dempsey or myself, and I'm just throwing out names, just on the staff, those are the guys who can help Mauricio Pochettino understand, hey, this is what the culture looks like. This is how players come up. This is who's running the show right now in Major League Soccer. This is who produces the best talent, and give that understanding. Then you don't need an American to be the head coach. It's for me, it's whoever's the best for the job.
Okay.
And currently our player pool is all over the place. We're getting dual nationals who haven't grown up in this country. So why all of a sudden are we saying, no, we can't have a foreign national team coach? And I get the whole theory of, hey, well, only a national team coach from that country has won a World Cup. There's never been a foreign manager coaching a country to win a World Cup. Well, how many countries have won a World Cup? And the countries that have won a World Cup, what is their history like in terms of creating players and having the talent to win a World Cup? So that will be my argument to that. Eventually, that's not going to be the case anymore. Eventually, a foreign manager will win a World Cup at some point, right? It's just inevitable. And Thomas Tuchel is coaching England. Who's to say England wouldn't win the 2026 World Cup, or is that a possibility? Then what? So for me, you can easily circumvent that problem with having former players on the staff or people that understand. And, unfortunately, that can be a problem, made up for fans to kind of get behind.
All right.
Lots to unpack here. No, go ahead. You can jump in.
So I did this morning on Morning Footy, so I'll reiterate for those who didn't get to see it. First off, this is not Musah Reyna taking a shot at Mauricio Pochettino, so let's not set it up that way.
No.
This is also Musah Reyna's feelings for multiple interviews over the last couple of years. This is not the first time that he has said this, right? He said it this week, and it fits because it fits with the timing of Pochettino's comments, right? And the national team and the state that it's in. I agree with Bruce in everything he said. I don't think anything he said was wrong. I do disagree that at this point, I think Mauricio Pochettino was the best guy. They could have gotten Jurgen Klopp, right? That was the other one that everyone wanted, but it sounds like, knowing what we learned throughout the process, that Jurgen Klopp had no interest in coaching at all moving forward, and we're seeing that play out. So I think both of them can kind of live together for me. I'm happy that Pochettino is here. I do wish that Pochettino, and I said this when he was hired, I said it this morning, I'll say it again, and I'll say it a year from now if it doesn't happen, to Charlie's point, is I hope that they put an American on that staff at some point.
But is it too late, Tony, at that point?
No, I don't think it is. I don't think it is too late, because I think Pochettino's comments, what we heard from Bruce, is what Pochettino just learned over the last couple months, is that the culture is different. He has to treat players a little bit differently than maybe he has in some other, maybe that clearly that he grew up with in Argentina, or that he's managed. So I think the two actually go hand in hand right now and sort of complement each other. I don't think any of them, and again, Bruce never called out Pochettino. And if he did this interview,
make that clear. Yeah.
He would say the same thing. And he said it years ago as well. But this isn't a Pochettino thing. And he did say, as you said, Jimmy, he went on to say, I'm sure he's a good coach, but he finished the quote with, but I'm paraphrasing. He basically said, I watched the Nations League and I can't believe we can't beat Panama and Canada.
Right.
And that's the end of the quote that maybe, our didn't hear.
I'll add to that quote as well. He also said, if you look at every national team in the world, the coach is usually a domestic coach. And I think when you have coaches that don't know our culture, our players, our environment, it's hard. And listen, Pochettino's a very good coach, but coaching international football is completely different than club football. And yeah, I agree with those sentiments as well, that it's a different beast and a different animal to say. I think what's interesting is when you hire Mauricio Pochettino, and when we hired Jurgen Klinsmann in the past, right? A big name in the game. And there's an expectation. There's an expectation, though, that's going to get, everything's going to get leveled up. So when Mauricio Pochettino gets hired, he was the biggest and best name available, and we got him. You're like, hot damn, here we go. And now, when we're a year out from the World Cup, or a little bit over a year, and we're struggling to beat Panama and Canada in the Nations League, there should be some rightful questions as to, is this right? Is this the right guy? Is he still tinkering? How much time does he need to tinker? And so that should give us a pause. And okay. If he's not the right guy for the job, well, we're in it now. So how do we figure that out? And if he's still trying to see the player pool, okay. But man, I mean, everything's going to be judged on, as it should be, what we do in the World Cup, right? So yeah, I'm a little concerned because it still feels like, based on the comments that we talked about with Pochettino in the first segment, that he's still trying to figure out what his best collection of guys is, and what's the identity of our team. What does he want the identity of our team to be? And can he kind of meet the players where they are and to make sure he can squeeze out the most potential out of this particular group, both individually and collectively? I don't know who wants to jump in here, but Bruce definitely.
Let me, Jimmy.
Bruce is speaking as a fan too. He's concerned, right? He obviously wants the U.S. to do what we all want the U.S. to do well. And so when I try to find a positive side of things, at the moment we're not in that space. And I'm hopeful that a good couple performances against Turkey and Switzerland will kind of give us that boost that we need going into the Gold Cup.
But Jimmy, like, look at, to your point, the one thing that it frustrates me, I may as well get it off my chest. Like, I can't stand, like, I look at other national teams, and you're right, domestic coaches, but they're littered with, their staffs are littered with, whether it's the first team staff, whether it's the under 23s, the under 20s, the under 18s, all the way through there. They're littered with ex-players that have seen. I mean, you go look at. I did this in the 2022 World Cup, and it was amazing. I probably have a sheet of paper I still saved on my desk at home that has all the people, all the teams in the final 8 of that tournament, and you go look at their entire staffs, which in general are helping you during the World Cup. So from your U15 coaches on, they're helping, whether it's preview scouting the next team, whether it's breaking down tapes, like, there's so much to do, and we know, right, in 1 month of a World Cup, and they're littered with it. For me at U.S. Soccer, it was starting to get there with Tab when he had guys in there, whether they were majority assistant coaches. We don't see it anymore in our national, and I don't know how the hell we ever got away from this when we had the 3 cycles, the most successful 3 cycles that we've ever had for our youth national teams, which is this group of players that we're seeing now at the full national team and the group just behind it, and how we've ever gotten away from that. It just blows my mind. I was there for 5 years. Take my name out of it. I don't want to do it. I loved what I did. I can't believe there's not a next generation of players that are littered through our youth national team systems.
Okay. And I agree with you on that. The one thing I want to add to this is that there was a quote, and I want to circle back to this because it didn't resonate with me as much as it is right now. And Charlie, you're coaching. I know you're coaching U9s, but Tony, I want to get your thoughts on this too. How long does it take you to evaluate talent? Like, if you have an idea of what you want to see from your team, and Pochettino's come out and said after 8 months,
10 minutes. 10 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, you have a
seriously
nice,
10 minutes is all I need.
Okay, but you also probably still need to say, okay, I have a core group of players that are most likely going to be a part of this moving forward. Sure, there are a few that maybe if they're not, rowing the boat in the same direction, we might have to consider leaving them off, which is something of an underlying message from what I've seen from Mauricio Pochettino. He's not scared to maybe leave off a big name for the right mentality. But they've got 8 months. They said they have a very good picture. Okay, I'd like to think that if they had to do an exercise right now, they could name their 23 or 26 or whatever the name is for the World Cup. So I just kind of wondered, you say 10 minutes, Tones, how long would it take you to kind of okay, you've had 8 months and you've seen a lot of these guys in camp, so you have a pretty good idea of who they are both on and off the field. Are you concerned that there's still some hints of we still need to find more guys?
Well, no, my bigger concern, look, Pochettino and his staff evaluated a Nations League roster. We could have argued about 1 or 2 players in that roster, but we knew Pulisic, McKennie, Adams. I mean, I'm going through the list everyone knows. Right? Those were the right guys to scout and bring your team, but they performed so poorly. That's the problem for me, is that can you trust them again now in the Gold Cup? Or do you go, holy cow, I just saw them in what we all said was the biggest tournament left before the World Cup. Now Gold Cup becomes the biggest tournament left before the World Cup. That's the concerning part, is that you actually have to go out. You're not just scouting. Normally you're scouting, like, if they've got 23 players, you're scouting like 18 to 23. Who's going to fill those roster spots, right? I feel like we're scouting in like 10 to 15, 10 to 23 right now.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, or whatever I'd have to go back and count them all up, but whatever the number is got bigger of the spots, because before the Nations League, we sat here and we didn't we do a prediction of the 2026 roster? I think we did a prediction.
We'll have to dig that up.
Or maybe, let's save it for some point. I think like the number of I don't knows or question marks got bigger. And that's the problem for me. Or that's the concern, I should say.
So I want to throw this in because I've seen a couple of comments in terms of the foreign manager aspect, right? The countries who have won a World Cup: Brazil, Germany, Italy, Argentina, Uruguay, Spain, France, England. That's it. That's it. So I heard this from somebody who works as an executive in the landscape of U.S. soccer, and they said,
"We want names.
Who are we?" And not just us three, but general public. We were included in that, to say that one way is right versus one way is wrong when none of us have won a World Cup. And I said, okay, I understand your line of thought. We can't say that a new training method like a quality of play ranking is the right way to do something or the wrong way to do something if we've never developed world-class talent and we've never won a World Cup or a major FIFA trophy. And I said, well, how many countries have? Right? Just the ones that I've named. So you can't tell me that those you have to have won a World Cup or have developed a world-class player to be able to have a say in something or to have a reaction to a
well, couldn't we say the same thing to them? Like, who are they to decide that they make the decisions when they haven't won a World Cup either?
What 100%, but they're saying, hey, we're trying. You can't fault people for trying because what we've done hasn't worked. So we need to try new things, and you can't come out here and say someone is crazy or that an idea is horribly wrong if they're trying something and none of us have done anything to say that that's not the right approach, right? So we can't be out here saying that this is the wrong aspect or the wrong way to develop players in terms of development with winning and losing versus, hey, we want to develop a playing style and the coaches to develop this playing style and say that they're wrong.
Okay. So then if I assume Mauricio Pochettino being hired as part of this conversation. Okay. Just to make it a little bit more clear. We took a chance on him, which didn't feel like much of a chance. You got a guy who has a decorated record as a club manager, played for his national team, right? So he knows what that's like, what that feels like. And by all accounts and purposes,
has coached in the Champions League final.
Right. Coach in the Champions League final, managed some teams that had punched above their weight. Great. That's kind of the profile.
World-class players. Right. 100%.
Right. Develops younger players. And so he ticks a lot of boxes. Again, that's in a club, day-to-day club situation. There, we might be looking back in a year and a half time and be like, maybe he wasn't the right guy. And that's going to be really disappointing. I'm all for giving that guy a chance. That was a huge get, and we're all really excited. I guess just right now, in this particular moment, we're just a little disappointed by the output of the national team and what we've seen from – because we're seeing and hearing all the right things, but it's not being produced out on the field, Tones.
Hey, Jim, can I just clear my stance on this?
Yeah.
I don't blame any of this on Mauricio Pochettino, by the way.
No.
This is on – I just want to be clear. I want to be on record. I don't blame Nations League on Mauricio Pochettino, right? For me, it lies squarely on the shoulders of the players. If Klopp were the coach, if Pochettino were the coach, if Bruce were the coach, if Berhalter were the coach, I don't think the results would have changed. The players didn't come with the right frame of mind. And for me personally, Nations League is strictly on the players. I'm happy with Mauricio Pochettino being our coach right now. I hope he gets the best out of them. We're going to judge him, like you said, on the World Cup. And at the end, we'll figure out, was it good? Was it bad? Did it work? Did it not work?
But Tony,
this was the players for me.
But Tony, in saying that, and I agree with you that this is on the players, but can we agree that Pochettino didn't make some of the right adjustments given how the game played? And I look at Jack McGlynn, because for me, I'm not trying to,
the substitution, right?
Chuck doesn't like Jack McGlynn, everybody.
No. I am definitely not trying to highlight Jack McGlynn in any way, but I'm saying what Jack McGlynn gives you is that the type of right player to come into a game to change the situation when you played with Tessman and Adams together in the first place. And I think Tessman has come along brilliantly from the under 23s to now. I think he's made tremendous progress. And I think playing in Serie A, playing in Serie B, all that
Right.
playing time has helped him. But given where Panama were, how they played, how the game was going, I have a lot of questions on
Agree
how
with you.
Pochettino managed that game.
I said
as
it
a
on the
head coach,
broadcast.
I
Right?
don't
I
think he
said
did
it.
the best job.
Right. I said we brought in a like for like, and I was surprised by that. Chris Whittingham asked me during the broadcast, and I said that was a like for like. I couldn't understand. It didn't seem like an injury thing, but I wanted to change there too. No, I get it. But I can my counter argument is I don't remember what minute he came in, but I feel like it was like 30 minutes or less in that game. I'd have to go look it up. But for, let's say, 60 minutes, did you like what you were seeing? Like, I was like, holy Christ, man, what the hell is going on here? Like,
100%.
literally. Yeah. So I know, but Charlie, I agree with you 100%. We said it on the broadcast. I'm just trying to play the other, think about the other side with putting it on the players for me.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's on the players. I agree. Regardless of who the coach was on the sidelines, it just wasn't good enough, period. So I want to take out the coaching decisions and that, but I'm saying down the line, I think Pochettino needs to get those decisions right of players to come in and
100%.
change the game, because Jack McGlynn is not that player to come in and change the game. I like the Martin O'Malley comment that, Poch got a red dot for that one. But what I will say is it is apparent that there's something going wrong in the squad at the moment that needs to be remedied. And I don't know if that's just the understanding of how to get the most out of each player, how to hold players accountable to get that spark going. If there needs to be a different captain in terms of somebody who's going to be vocal and pushing guys forward, whatever that will be, but something has to get going. And I would have made the hire from Mauricio Pochettino 100 out of 100 times. It's not even a question, given his resume, given his intent to want to manage in the World Cup and to take over the U.S. job, 100%. But I think at the same time, I'm glad he's taken the time to understand our player pool to make sure, hey, we need to start digging deep, because I may have to take some big names off the team and put in guys who are going to actually add value in the way that I see fit.
I think what's interesting from something I didn't mention before, when we named kind of the games that we were impressed by in the first segment, the game I referenced was June 6th, 2021. We're almost 4 years away from that game. You guys referenced two games at the end of 2022. It's been a while since we've seen a performance that we've seen moments, and under Pochettino, that first half against Jamaica was excellent. Jamaica just got outcoached in that one and outplayed and outperformed, and we took our chances. I think what's interesting, this is a real thin line between success and failure at the highest levels. But if Josh Sargent scores one of those goals against Panama, the whole complexion of that game changes.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say we go on to win the Nations League or even to go on to beat Panama, because we've seen that we have lost leads to them before, obviously due to a red card in Copa America, which didn't help. But it's crazy how much the mood can swing, and how important these friendlies coming up are going to be in terms of building our confidence moving forward. So, yeah, wow, these are big themes.
Hey, we had some deep combos here today on this podcast. I didn't know we were gonna go deep like that.
Yeah, I was ready for something lighter, Jimmy. You let us down a dark alley, man.
Let's save it for the last segment. All right, we'll talk a little
man.
Coppa Italia semifinals. So we're gonna take our next break, and our last break will call what you want. When we come back, we'll get into Milan for our big Milan fan over here, Tony Meola.
Critics are buzzing about the new season of Yellow Jackets.
This is not healthy.
Yellow Jackets' new season, now streaming on the Paramount Plus with Showtime plan.
Welcome back to your, hopefully we're average to good at this particular show. Maybe we're more red dot than green dot in this particular episode. No, we're having a lot of fun here. Call what you want. I'm Jimmy alongside Charlie and Tony. And let's talk a little AC Milan. They played against Inter in the Coppa Italia semifinals yesterday. They needed to get a result after 1-1 in leg one. And listen, I'll be honest, the first 30-ish minutes of that game, Milan looked like absolute trash. I was just like, Inter's going to win this game, no doubt. They just their identity, their purpose, their intention when they play. Milan looks very individual and more reactive in terms of how they're moving on both sides of the ball. And then Luka Jovic scores up top, and then the capitulation for Inter starts to happen. Like, it's almost like they can't believe they're losing to a team this bad either. But Milan, to their credit, go on to win the game 3-0. Milan look great when they're winning, but when they're not, it's really hard watch. Christian Pulisic starts in this game. They booked their ticket against most likely going to be Bologna in the final, which is not going to be easy. But this is really the last thing they have to play for because they're not going to make Europe, it looks like. And
they win it. They will if they win.
Well, if they win it, that's true, right?
They're in
the
Europa League, so
they'll be in the Europa League. Good point.
It's almost like man, as bad as that went, we got like a little bailout card because Europa League would be great for Milan because they can make a deep run with the team that they have. Now, I'd love to hear from Tony. Is Conceição the right guy to go for it? Even if he wins, is he the right guy to go for it? Have you seen enough from him to say, hey, we should stick with him versus, hey, clean slate after the season? Now is a good time to hire these managers who are available.
So before you hop in, I just want to say that he's given me strong Eric Ten Hag vibes where he might win a few trophies and smoke a cigar after winning the Super Coppa Italia and also this Coppa Italia if they do it against Bologna.
Stop, Jimmy.
But it's not aesthetically pleasing.
Stop.
And you're like, what's going on with the club, right? I don't know. So is he the Eric Ten Hag of Serie A?
Stop, Jimmy. First off, yeah, look, they still have to. They'd have to beat what we think is going to be Bologna. We'll find out today. But they just lost to them last week, so let's see how that. Or they, Bologna is beating them. They beat who else? Juventus last week. They've beaten Inter this year. Good team. Christian Pulisic yesterday, only American who played in the game, was just okay in the game. I think filled a role. They were set up to be a counterattacking team. So I mean, decent but not great. But I don't think hurt the team at all. With regards to Conceição, I'd be okay if they kept him. I've been on record saying that I'm okay if they keep him. They got to get better as a team. Over the last 4 or 5 games, I was really interested how he'd use Pulisic or Musah because he has changed to 3 in the back with 4 in the midfield, so 2 wing backs. Teo Hernandez on one side. I thought, if he changed 6 weeks ago, Yunus Musah would have been the guy in the right-hand side. Yunus Musah has not been good for them at all, and he's been rooted to the bench now, where he seemed like a guy that Conceição was trying to fit in every measure, whether it was right wing, whether it was a central midfielder, or whether it was as a right midfielder, right back. He just hasn't been able to break into the lineup, so that's a little bit concerning. We're having this discussion about the national team and talking about, making sure players play all the time. Yunus, it looks to be hard right now to find minutes, where Christian, I think we know, is going to get minutes every week. But so with Conceição, I've said I'm okay keeping him, but they got to find a better rhythm in their group right now. And there has been outside rumors of Gio potentially going to Milan. I don't know that would be a good fit for him right now because it would be if they get rid of Reinders, maybe if they can hold on to Reinders. So Gio's going to be. I would imagine though his name's going to pop up again at Milan at some point as we get to the end of the season and we hear 8,000 rumors about where everybody's going.
I do not want to see Gio at Milan.
Is it any fit? Any fit a good fit for Gio at this point? Like just get him out of Dortmund
a fit where he's going to play every damn week.
What do you think of Ajax, Charlie?
If we go Ajax? You know what I mean?
I said Como. Yeah, I wasn't on that day. I had some computer problems, but I went with Como for that show. Never.
I think a team that dominates possession, a team where he's going to get a good run, where they enjoy playing young players, because remember, Gio's still young. I think it would be a great fit for him, because it's either that or you come to MLS and you play every week, and I think that will also give him a great chance to get back to the team.
Yeah, I like that. Thanks, Chuck, for kind of leaning over to my side. Let's talk briefly though about Yunus Musah, because after making his mistakes against Fiorentina, which saw him get subbed off in the first half of that particular game, which is never good, he has yet to come off the bench. 3rd straight game where he has been watching. He's got great seats to Milan. And I now get the sense, I don't know who's going to be in charge. Frankly, I wouldn't stick with Conceição. I just don't think he's going to work. And if you can go find maybe an up-and-coming manager already in Serie A, maybe steal them from a Bologna or a Fiorentina, somebody that's punching above their weight.
Francesco Farioli at Ajax. That's who I would go for if I'm Milan. A fantastic young coach.
They're rumored. You think about it from Pulisic's and Musah's standpoint. They're rumored with Pioli, who liked Yunus Musah. They're rumored on a return for him. Christian, of course, I think would fit under him, no doubt. They're rumored with Allegri, right, which is a completely different style of football, which is sit back and counterattack at best over the last.
I already feel bad for the guys if Allegri comes in.
Yeah, and then potentially they're talking about in Italy, Antonio Conte may be leaving Napoli after this season. He's already fighting with the ownership and
well, that's
normal. He has made comments about how I understand how things can't get done here. We go back to his match day 1 comments where he said, I thought it was bad here. I thought I was going to find good things, but it's been really difficult to find any, which I don't know how he got to week 2, but he made it there. And then you ask, does that suit Christian Pulisic the way he wants to play? Because it's a little more combative with the way Antonio Conte wants to play, although he gets the best out of players all the time. So it might be what all of those guys need. So those are the guys that are like rumored right now.
There's the part of me that kind of wants to see Milan lose in the Coppa Italia final, because then they won't qualify for Europe, so that Christian will be a little more well-rested ahead of the World Cup in 2026, because he looks like he's slowed down a little bit, Chuck, right? I mean, he's got a lot of mileage on those legs. We know that he's been nursing some niggling injuries that stay with you, right? If you're playing every 3-4 days, you're being counted on to be the guy. When he looks fresh and ready to go, the guy produces. There's no question. His numbers back that up. But he's slowed down a little bit in the back half of the season, and I think it's just due to the mileage. And so if he can not play, this is me being very selfish. I'm sorry for all the Milan fans out there. Obviously, you want to play in Europe, but I wouldn't be that sad if you didn't, because that would mean a more well-rested Christian going into the World Cup. Chuck, your thoughts?
I want Christian to be playing and in a good rhythm. I don't look at it as, hey, let's have him not playing as many competitions so that he's well rested. Because as a competitor, you want to be chasing. You want something to be
good.
Going
no, I get
after.
you.
So
let's save that competitiveness for the World Cup. Let's just get to bottle up all his competitiveness and just save it for kicking ass at the World Cup. I got no problem with that.
That's like saying at every one of the big clubs who are chasing Champions League trophies that they're going to be better off if they're only playing one game a week and
just playing around. I get you.
Yeah. But no, we have some. I think Yunus Musah has to make a move as well. Speaking of Milan, I think at least under Conceição, there's not going to be a place for him, and so. If you're a young player, it's a massive club. I don't think he'll have trouble finding another club to play at and just putting yourself in a good position. I think Yunus Musah's best position is at 8. It's not out wide. It's centrally, and it's in a role where he's not asked to be the creative playmaker, to be scoring goals or assists, because that's not his strength. And he's not asked to be a defensive midfielder. He could do it when we saw in Nations League as someone who's filling in, and you're playing against a team that maybe it's so predictable and doesn't have much of the ball and lumps it forward. It's a little bit easier, but every day, every week at the highest level, that's not his job. He's not someone who's going to be breaking up plays and tackling people. But as an 8, where you find him as an option, he can dribble out of something, play to the next guy who's going to create. He's phenomenal. So I think that's where he needs to find himself in a good club situation. And same thing with Gio, a team where they're tasked with keeping possession. They need him to be the creative playmaker, playing under a number 9, or maybe it's playing in a 3-5-2, whatever that is. But that's when he comes to life, when he's pulling the strings.
Okay, last question then before we let everybody go. And this includes this question. I want to get answers from people in the comments. We'll throw up a couple of those comments while we're discussing it. Of these 2 players, Tony, I'm putting you on the hot seat first. I know you're going Musah and Gio Reyna.
Okay. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think both of them will be on the 2026 World Cup roster, or do you think one of them will be left off, or both? That won't be both. I think one. I could see one, but so I went first. But where do you net out on this, Big Tones?
Why are you coming to me first?
Because I know you love being on the hot seat. We know you love ratings and reviews and grades and all that stuff.
Yes, I see both of them on the roster. And I guess my hope is that they make smart moves in May or June of this summer transfer window, and they get in good situations and they find their form. So I'm going to go with yes.
Okay, so just to remind everybody how we started the show, Mauricio Pochettino's thoughts. He's looking more at mentality than talent. There's no question.
And name.
Gio Reyna and Gio Reyna and Yunus Musah, wildly talented. We all know that. But if it comes down to mentality, how they fit in within the group, do you think, Chuck, with a little bit more of that preface, sorry I didn't give you that same context, Big Tones, but do you think they're both on the World Cup squad, or one of them get left home?
Right now, it's easy to say that one will be left home, and I think that would be Gio Reyna in this case, and Yunus Musah would be on the bench. But I'm willing to say with Tony, both will be on the squad for 2026 because we know how talented they are, and I see a lot of the comments. Yeah, and glimpses here and glimpses there. It's never consistent. Well, guess what? And a year before the World Cup, they need to make moves that guarantee them playing time, and then it's on them to move forward. And Tony and I are both willing to bet on those players taking it up a notch and performing the way they need to make that World Cup and be impact players. The better question was, would one or none or both be in the starting 11? And I'd be willing to say that one of the two would be.
Yeah, that's a good question.
And that's
as well.
and that's given both are playing. Yeah.
But I think it's interesting to use the word glimpses. We don't necessarily need to hear from Gio, or it doesn't have to be about Gio and Yunus with regard to this. Mm-hmm. We need more than glimpses, not only from them individually, but also from our whole team. We need to see, and if I'm a coach, I need to see players that I can trust making decisions on both sides of the ball consistently. If we're making good soccer decisions and doing that, the results take care of themselves if you're doing the little things and you're there for your team and the intangibles and the details, all that stuff comes into it. And so if those guys are finding situations where they're demonstrating that at the club level in and game out, then they could definitely both be a part of the starting 11. I don't see that, but obviously make the team in 2026.
Chuck, were you leaning towards one or the other to start being the starting 11? Or are you just saying you think one of them will make it?
In terms of if they're both playing?
Well, you said the starting 11, right? You said
yeah.
I
think Gio Reyna, because he's so different than everyone else, and there's a real lack of a creative playmaker who can play in between the lines and beat guys on the dribble and then make that pass. Mm-hmm. I think because he has such an eye for that ball, and just the little glimpse that we saw in the Nations League in Las Vegas, where he was able to find Balogun. That was the best we saw Balogun running off the ball and the ball getting to where he wanted it to. That connection, and it was such a short term, right? I think that speaks volumes of how good Gio is when he can get on the same wavelength as the number 9. That's missing. When you don't have that player, we've seen it. There's no connection, and that number 9 is on an island. And Balogun in Copa America was on an island, and he's great. He scored that incredible goal, solo goal, but on an island. You need to have some sort of glue, connect that connective tissue between the lines. And Gio's literally the only one that we've actually seen as like a creative number 10 to do it. Unless you got to play with two who are not necessarily 10s, but two attacking midfielders. Other than that, Gio's the only guy who could do it as the solo 10.
Listen, I'm a fan of both of these guys. And just go back to Gio and Yunus. Again, they're wildly talented. I don't see at this moment either one of them starting in the World Cup.
Well, it's easy to say that now, right?
Of course it is. But and I hope I'm wrong. I hope they prove me wrong. But and I hope they're sharp enough to go out there and make a difference as we've seen them demonstrate in the past. But at this particular moment, I don't see either one of them starting. And I guess we'll have to come back to this podcast in a year's time and see where it's all shaken out. All right, we're calling it a show. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. As always, come back and join us again and on the next time we do this, which is going to be Tuesday, and that'll be at 10 a.m. Pacific. I don't remember what day of the week it is. I just love talking with you guys, and we could do it hour upon hour upon hour. So, yes, next Tuesday, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. Come and join us live on the Gloss America YouTube channel. Enjoy your weekend. Hope it's a good one. My U14s in the state cup final. Everybody wish me the best. I need good vibes.
Hey,
in the chat right
let's
now.
go, Jimmy.
Listen, we're punching way above our weight. We're a silver team, but we got to the final of the gold level. So I'm absolutely buzzing. We're playing with house money at this point, but I'll let you know how it goes on Tuesday. Good luck, everybody. Good luck to us. Good luck to everybody else. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you on the other side. Later.